Hi everyone, my name is Loyal Wooldridge and I'm the BCNDP candidate for Kelowna Centre, and this is Loyal's Community QuickCast. And today is a really exciting discussion actually, because we bring you a different subject every single episode and explain it to you in 15 minutes or less, not only the problem but also the solution, because it's easy to identify problems. It's much harder to work on the solution. And today we are talking about homelessness. This is something that touches our community at every level and something I hear about every single day. And we have a subject matter expert here today, which is Tara Tschritter from Turning Points Collaborative, and she is the regional director for Southern and Central Okanagan for Turning Point. So welcome, Tara, and I'm really excited to chat with you today because we've had the opportunity to work together a little bit with my city role and really learning about how Turning Points addresses homelessness differently.
Absolutely.
So maybe you can chat a little bit about that, and we'll pull up what Turning Points does a little bit differently as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Loyal. It's really great to be on here and to take a minute to discuss an issue that is so important to our community. So Turning Points Collaborative provides support to our communities by offering a continuum of services. So we operate from Enderby and all the way down to Summerland. Actually, we're starting a new affordable housing build down there quite shortly. And we attempt to provide housing options and housing solutions for folks, and also look at the various barriers that individuals have to housing and address those. So we do that through providing anything from street outreach to affordable housing to supportive housing, shelters, the full continuum of services. Right. We also have addictions treatment programs and employment services as well.
That's excellent. And we're going to dive a little bit more into that throughout the episode. And the first thing I want to acknowledge is that there's no doubt that the homelessness crisis affects all members of our community, whether you're living without a home or you're frustrated because you're feeling the effects of homelessness, maybe petty theft or something like that. And I hear about it every single day because those frustrations are real. And I don't think we can discount that. But of course, there's a lot of heavy lifting that has to be done to support folks onto the path of recovery. And I think that's what Turning Points does so well. And maybe what we can talk about is a little bit about the philosophy of the whole human approach. And Femika, if we could pull up that slide just to chat briefly about it. So Tara, you were explaining the whole human approach to me, because I think a lot of people think just about harm reduction in isolation or housing first just in isolation. But Turning Points does it a little bit differently. And you can talk a little bit more about the whole human approach here.
Absolutely, Loyal. And thank you so much for acknowledging how much of an issue it is and how it is a problem in our communities. And we really need to come up with innovative solutions in order to meet the needs of people. And people are a lot more than one dimension. We are whole humans. We are spiritual. We are social. We have our physical wellness. We have our occupational wellness. We have all of these different things that we need to consider when we're providing support to the individuals in our community. And at Turning Points Collaborative, those are the things that we consider in our programs and services that we provide. So whether that be in our shelter services, where we're providing harm reduction supports, or whether that be in our affordable housing programs or our treatment programs, we really look at the programs that we offer, and we look at how we can support the whole human and not just one aspect of their wellness.
And I thank you for explaining that, because we often hear about people that can't just be housing first, it has to be housing with services. And talking about the whole human, that's so important as people choose a path to recovery. Now, obviously, this is really complex work. There's not one single issue that leads to homelessness, but maybe you can talk a little bit about the complexities that lead to homelessness. I know like poverty, overlapping complex needs, but what are some of the things that you're observing in the community?
Yeah, I think anybody who is living in our communities understands how affordability has just become a challenge for everybody. And I'm sure you can imagine if you're a senior and you're living on basic. So the basic that you'd get if you're on CPP, OAS, and then you have the GIS top-up is about just over $1,800 a month.
Right.
Well, you can imagine if you are trying to afford your rent and your food and everything else, how limited your budget would be,
right.
and how vulnerable you could be if anything goes wrong, whether that's your health, whether, we see seniors who lose their housing because of, maybe their rental isn't available anymore and they have to get another rental. And now we're seeing those folks cycle into homelessness. So poverty is a big piece, and just the housing affordability.
Right.
And that's something that we really need to look at addressing with just really infusing our communities with more affordable housing.
Right.
And that's something that the government has been focusing on the last number of years, but something that has been a gap for many, many years. And we have a lot of catch up to do. I mean, I don't need to tell you.
Yeah.
So we're really looking at trying to infuse more affordable housing, because that's a prevention piece. If people have affordable housing and don't cycle into homelessness in the first place, that is a huge piece. So whether that's through subsidies, rental subsidies, or through affordable housing buildings, we really need a lot more of that just for that prevention piece. Just that's a simple one, the poverty, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you look at the housing investments over time, and we spoke to Shane Warman about this, and government exited the housing business for a couple of decades, which then creates this lag effect that we have to then make up for. And, we've built a lot of housing, obviously, over the last 6 years of my terms on council, but there's that lag effect that takes time for people to be able to realize the positive effect. So we didn't get here overnight, but obviously a long way to go as well. Now, when it comes to actual recovery, because a lot of folks that are experiencing homelessness may use substances, because when you're sleeping outside, you probably want to numb that away a little bit. What is Turning Point's doing in regards to recovery? So when someone comes into the system and they're evaluated, can you bring us through a little bit about what Turning Points does for a path to recovery?
Yeah, well, I think, just starting even like when you look at our continuum of services, we start with something called shelter diversion. So if people don't end up experiencing homelessness in the first place, their risk factors go way down to all of these things as you described. So our shelter diversion happens initially upon first contact. So we have shelter diversion in Vernon, in Kelowna, and in West Kelowna. And we actually just got some stats, I think like yesterday, for the last quarter. And out of 111 people that approached us for our support purposes, we were able to help 5 of them maintain their existing housing.
Oh, awesome.
17 of them we were able to divert into housing and to their natural supports. And 75 of them we're continuing to work with as they're living outside in Kelowna. So that is that just in itself, but that 5 and that 17 in the last quarter, that's 22 people. Is my math right? It is, right? 22 people that didn't cycle into our shelters in the first place. So that's a huge, huge component right there. And then secondly, when we provide harm reduction, which can be a very it's a contentious discussion. Yeah. It's a very spicy topic. And when we look at the way we provide harm reduction in our shelters or in our transitional housing, what we do is we really encourage people to stay alive, because if they're not alive, we cannot support them on their journey to wellness.
Right.
And how we do that is we clinically monitor their consumption of substances, but we don't create a community of substance users.
Right.
So there's a real difference, and it's like a micro shift that we've created away from I think when harm reduction was first rolled out, it was a response to the fentanyl crisis, and we're just doing the best we can. And now we're really just making sure that we ensure that we have these clinical monitoring spaces. People are able to use their substances, and then we're able to engage with them and get them the supports they need to access the next stage of their wellness journey.
Right.
And so for many of them, that may be a residential treatment program. And for others, it may be, connecting to mental health and substance use and some more outpatient stuff and the supports that they need.
Yeah.
So it's a really important shift. And we also look at, in our holistic harm reduction approach, in really creating like a flow of like waking and sleeping hours and like meal times and all those healthy routines for individuals.
And that starts at intake, doesn't it? Like you start setting those micro goals initially.
Right off the bat. And then replacing that substance use culture with life skills.
Right.
So, having that incorporated. So there's places and things that people can participate in that give them purpose and a sense of, goals for the day. Yeah, which is super important.
Yeah, maybe actually we could pull up that slide on the continuum of care, because I think it's important for folks to realize kind of the different steps that folks go through when they enter the system, and ranging from outreach all the way up to employment services. Now, of course, this is a straight line.
Yeah, and it's not meant to be.
Probably folks don't necessarily go through this in a straight line, but is there anything you wanted to touch on around the continuum of care that that do.
Yeah, and I think we've just added like a new section to our Continuum of Care, which is transitional housing.
Right.
So it is a step in that little housing puzzle piece that you see there. So having folks move out of shelter, individuals who may have been there for a period of time. This particular transitional housing program that we're operating is for people who are 55 plus and have physical disabilities. So then we'll be able to bring them into a transitional housing program where we can help them with establishing the routines of housing again,
right?
Which can get lost, right, when you're in shelter. So they're doing things like cooking some of their meals for the day. They're paying a program fee. They're doing those things, some of those skills that they may have lost.
Right.
And then they're also doing some more participation in the community as a whole, which is really important as well, outside of the homeless community. So
yeah.
Getting those broader community connections.
And I remember a couple of years ago, the snow started to fall, and Mayor Dias and I sat down with a lot of the folks in the homeless serving sector, including yourself, and that was one of the gaps that we identified early was folks are in shelter and then we're expecting them to go right into housing, but there was missing that step of transitional housing, which is where tiny homes and then the transitional housing trail side that Turning Points manages came to be. And so I think it's important for people to understand the different steps that lead to shelter, because it's not reasonable to think that someone's going to go from sleeping outside to living by themselves in supportive housing without the life skills and the actual supports to do that.
100%. Yep. Yeah. People really do lose a lot when they've experienced homelessness for a long time. So it takes, again, it was kind of like your analogy, like the problem that we've gotten into with the affordable housing didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be solved overnight.
Yeah.
So we have to have these innovative programs and solutions in place. The other piece that I think is a big piece of the continuum, I'm really proud of our addictions recovery program in Vernon, Bill's Place. And so we often send a lot of people through that program because it is a longer term program.
Right.
So they have a longer term recovery program, but they also have second stage housing there, which is so important. And we need more and more of that in our communities because we see the need for like healthy abstinence-based living as well, so that people can recover, because people do and they get well. And so we need to make sure that we have these variety of services. It can't be homogenous, right?
Exactly.
We need to have a wide variety.
And it, not one size fits all, obviously, and we need to invest into all different avenues of recovery. And of course, like we just talked about, it's not a linear journey either. Folks might need more support, or they might fall off the wagon, or what have you. So
100%. No, and it is very true, right? So, but a place for somebody always to be, no matter where they're at their journey, is really important. Yeah, because they're all humans and they're worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I get the community frustration. A lot of people say, just lock them up, throw away the keys, move them somewhere else, and the problem will go away. And I get it, because people are frustrated. But at the end of the day, we know that the solutions aren't going to be cheap, easy, or quick. And anyone that is bringing forward a solution like that is probably not as well informed on what's actually happening out there and with folks. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of investment, and obviously
100%
time.
Yeah.
So now, Tara, exciting, there's a fundraiser upcoming as well. Yeah.
I'm really, really excited. So this is, when I was speaking to you about our transitional housing program, this is an aspect to it that is so important. So community inclusion and social belonging is so important for folks, right?
Yeah.
And one of the risk factors for individuals when they are housed is they may cycle back into homelessness just because they're so isolated and alone, and they've lost their place in their community. So if we can help them find place within the broader community, this reduces that risk factor. So at Trailside, what we're going to do is just like how they have it in like the bougie retirement homes, how they have the van and people can sign up for various activities within the community. We're going to have that for our residents as well, so that they can start to participate in society again.
Right.
And so whether that be lawn bowling or whether that be, at the community recreation center swimming, and the van will have like sign up. And so there's availability for people to participate in things that interest them, and it'll be a broad availability. So we're fundraising. We have a staff member to facilitate this, and then we're fundraising so that we can get that van, that 14-seater van. So that's going to be great. And our fundraiser is October 5th.
Cool.
at Metro Community, and it's going to be fun. It's like a dance party. We've got some comedy. We have Derek's Steakhouse is catering,
Cool.
so it's going to be a lovely meal, a little bit of comedy, and then followed by DJ Haymaker is going to dance.
Who's
us
always
away.
awesome.
Oh, he's so fun.
Yeah.
He's really, really fun. So it's going to be a fun night. So I really would love it if people can come out and support us in reaching that goal to get that ban. And then what happens really from there is when people do transition into housing, they've found somewhere where they belong in community. And I think that is such an important piece.
Absolutely. I heard Gabor Mate say that the opposite of addiction is connection and community. And so I love this project because, again, it's bringing people back into our community, which makes Kelowna stronger. So, Tara, we're out of time, and I could talk to you probably all day. But you can always find me online on my social media channels at Loyal Kelowna on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of Loyal's Community QuickCast, and look forward to more upcoming conversations. So thanks again, Tara, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.